Welcome to the Circle of Birth podcast. I'm your host and advocate, Ali Kranz. These podcasts are here to gather stories, people and information to better our understanding of the wisdom of birth and how we can reclaim our connections to birth from conception and beyond. You will hear stories not only from Australia but from all over the world, bringing together women, partners, midwives, doulas and all the people that have a birth story to share. So jump right in for this next Circle of Birth story. So I thought it was about time that I shared with all of you the story of Mally's birth. Now, Mally is my first son and he is 6 years old now. So with that, I just want to emphasize on experience and coming from the lessons that I've learned and what I'm doing now and the stories that I'm listening to. I believe that we all have a journey, and I needed to find acknowledgement with this birth, and it took a long time of confusion and feelings and not knowing really what happened. And it empowered me into the beautiful experience that I had with Julie. That this story will be told as an experience, and I will try to explain the things that I did learn from this and from this birth experience and how it shaped me into my thoughts now and how I become, I guess, to have the beautiful birth that I did with Julia. And during this story, there are just so many beautiful elements to it as well. And what was lacking was the support again. And this is just exactly why I'm here doing what I'm doing and collating all these stories, because support is so, so important. So with that, I'll start off with the pregnancy of Mally. So I was 27 years old. I was living in Melbourne and I was having a lot of fun in life and just going solo and not interested in much, I guess, in a sense, in relationships or even having babies. It was just not even crossed my radar. But however, the fertility gods must have been in my favour and planned this for me, because I became pregnant with Mally. And going into this pregnancy and finding out I was pregnant, I was about 8 weeks. It was a big shock. A huge shock, because what was happening in my life at the time, it was not even perceived or thought about. So, and there it was. Having said that, when I did find out, I was sitting on the toilet with the pregnancy test, and I remember looking up into the ceiling and just going, wow. And I felt so, I can't even describe the feeling. It just felt right. And I felt, this is it. Like, I just felt like this was all masterminded for me. And this was the path I chose. And I felt really happy about it. And then after that, the logistical shock set in. And so I had to sort of think about what's what with this pregnancy and all the things that came with that. So so anyway, I was set myself up after all the shock and sorting everything out, and it was very sort of a good experience, I suppose, because I drew a lot of strength knowing that I was facing it alone. So alone in the sense, I guess, being not in your traditional relationship with a partner, and I guess drawing on the support around me for that. The worst part was the phone call to my mother, who over the years, my dear mother's had a lot of interesting phone calls from overseas, from all the places that I've lived in Australia, starting off with, "Mum, I need to tell you something." And this was one of them again. And she just knew straight away. She knew what was up, and she was in shock too, and we all got through that together. And from that became the excitement and the complete understanding of the biological processes of what was happening in my body, and I just embraced it from then on in. So I had the absolute best pregnancy, just amazing. Even no nausea, just a bit tired at the start, but that was it. I just bounced into it, and I felt good, and my body started to look really good, and I was just embraced healthy diet and healthy headspace and healthy people surrounding me, and I just went for it. And possibly the fact of being a single mother might have made me a bit more determined too, I think, to make sure that I was doing the best I could for myself and this little creature that was growing happily inside of me. I decided to keep finishing my studies, and that was really great. And I hadn't told anyone yet. And I remember that I was there at uni, and I was walking down the path, and this was, I think it was during like lunchtime or whatever, and I used to drink a lot of rosehip tea, and I remember this lady was walking with me, and I was drinking the tea, and I hadn't told anyone yet. This was only still early days, and she's like, like rosehip tea is used to, have an abortion, and it can create miscarriages, and she just said this out of the blue, and I just threw the cup of water and tea into the bushes, and I went, oh, well, there goes that then. And then I proceeded to tell her, and she said, wow, I had no idea. Like, I normally wouldn't have said anything, and that ended my rosehip tea drinking. So there again goes the connection of us mamas, because she was such a beautiful mama, and when I told her, she was so happy, and I drew upon her networking and skills too, I suppose, which was great. Studies, and then I planned the hospital birth, which was at one of the major hospitals in Melbourne, quite renowned for women and birthing. So I thought, that's pretty cool, I'll be fine. I thought that I was a very educated person, and I was quite apt with life and a lot of decision making, that this would be fine, that no one was really going to burst my bubble. So I didn't do anything in terms of research. I went to the appointments, I diligently stuck my arm out, poked my belly out, spread my legs, answered the questions, ticked the boxes, signed my name at the dotted line, and that's what I did. It wasn't until about probably halfway through the pregnancy, when it was time to have the gestational diabetes test, was when it really started hitting me about how I felt and how my vulnerabilities started to feel a bit violated by this support network that I was actually going to birth into. In a sense, I was really looking forward to going to the hospital and being looked after by these people, and I thought that it would be a good experience. I had no experience of birth. From what my mum told me, she had some very difficult births with my brothers, and I was born 7 years later as an unplanned, lovely daughter that she always wanted. That unfortunately, as a teenager, I always used that against her. And so I guess my birth with my mum might have been difficult for her too. She probably had a lot of fear over her last experience, and that might have carried over to me, and we never spoke of it. We never spoke much about birth or what it means, and so that was it. And apart from that, whatever's been portrayed on the media, and that's all I saw. And I didn't affect me as such. I was surrounded by some really cool, inspiring women in my life, and they were women that were doing quite radical things in terms of their lives and their work and their art and their creativity. So there was never really any doubt that there was going to be anything like the dramatic things that you see, I guess, in the media. So there, I guess I had this kind of bubble that I put around me, and maybe I was a bit too naive though, and I think that's what happened. I took this gestational diabetes test, and the one thing that the lady said to me is, you can't vomit, otherwise you'll have to retake the test. And I just remember drinking this syrup and just going, wow, like there wouldn't even be that much sugar compounded into my body at any normal stage. This just seemed so insane to me, and I never questioned it. I just did it, and I felt sick straight away, and I had to sit there and wait for 2 hours. And during that time, I kind of curled up, sweating over the chair, and off I went to the toilet, and I knew it was coming, and I started to feel sick, and I was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Willing myself out of it, splashing water on my face, and I thought, right, I'll get out of this toilet. And out I went, and I just felt so faint and so dizzy, and just such a ridiculous high of sugar that my body wasn't coping, and I just like rolled myself onto the ground in this ball and lay there. And it just so happened to be in front of this reception desk, and it was bizarre. I just remember like this person just walked straight past me and didn't even look at me, and this lady popped her head over the desk and said, "What are you doing laying on the floor like that?" And I just felt so, oh my goodness, it was not a nice feeling. And I really, it just, that was it for me. And that's when I started questioning, what am I doing? Like, you know, how am I handing myself over and my body to these series of tests and series of people that had such scorn for me and a lack of care, I suppose. And I picked myself up and I left, and I went home, and I hung around my beautiful friends and regained my sense of self-worth and power and what that means to be a woman. Thank goodness for them, because, you know, that was it for me, and it didn't really hassle me too much. And so it was that part of the pregnancy then I, you know, started to question things. However, I still thought, no, this will be fine. I'll have a really strong friend with me that is an amazing, beautiful person that's experienced birth, and she was my go-to, and she knew me so well, and I just thought, she's there, she'll vouch for me, and I've got this. I'll be fine. So, yeah, not much planning on the birth, no informing myself, and I probably was naive, and I handed myself over. So big lessons there again. Make sure your support network is on tap, is great, and make sure that you own your body and your responsibility for your body too. Had I known everything, again, in hindsight, and it's what a lot of us say, had I known all this stuff back then that I know now, my goodness, it would have been different. However, this is a journey, and life is a journey, and we are products of our experiences, and it's not what happened to us, it's how we come out of it after and heal and learn. And again, this is why I'm sitting here doing this, because I want others, and especially those first-time mamas, to not look at these things with a fear, with a learning and an understanding. And again, regaining that responsibility. It's like, take control of your body and your health and what's happening in your pregnancy, because at the end of all of this, no one has as much stake in it as yourself. And that's what I've learnt now from this. So from that little naive girl with the little bubble that was probably a bit silly, but that's okay. I had quite an optimistic outlook on it. And I just always envisioned that I wouldn't be in the city for long. I couldn't stand it. The fumes, the cars, everything was affecting me. And growing up on a farm and being a bit of a country girl, that's what I wanted to go back to with my son. And I did find out the sex, and I found out at the 20-week scan, and I remember looking at the lady because she asked me if I wanted to know, and I didn't really think about it, and I just thought, she knows. I need to know. So she told me, and I just giggled a bit. So birthing time. now, after Julia's birth, my recent daughter, I realised that I possibly am a bit of a candidate for prodromal labour. And this is exactly what happened with Mally's birth. So luckily, or whatever innately told me to do it, I got my due dates changed. So I was due 2 weeks before my actual due date, and I got that changed pretty early on in the piece because I thought that my cycles were pretty all over the place. They were either 28 days or 2 weeks from that. I think 35 days, that's right. So I just went with that, and I felt so strongly about getting that changed, and she didn't really question it, which was great. She said, okay, we'll do that. And so I got that done, and I went into labour 4 days over my new due date. So imagine if I never got them changed. So what would have happened then? So 3 days of these interesting little surges of up and down and going around and excitement and sitting on trampolines with a bunch of kids and feeling like this is it and preparing myself, going to bed and then nothing and then the same all over again. So I did learn with Julia's birth to rest. No matter what, I just rested. And with this birth, I was so excited that I thought I would just have the baby and that'd be all cool. But no, 3 days on, and it wasn't to that evening I was at home, and my housemates were my beautiful friends from Scotland, Patrice and Adrian, that I loved dearly and I miss them a lot, but I was glad that they were there, and we were all sitting there, and I made Adrian get me a chili sandwich. So jalapenos was my thing, and it was such a big thing for me that I could eat probably a jar of them a day, but I didn't. So the sandwich was ridiculously fueled with jalapenos, so much so that I really don't know why I wanted to do that, but I did. And I think it was possibly more of like, okay, I've heard that chilies can get babies out. Let's go for it. Had that at 7 o'clock and said, I'm off to bed now. Good night. And went off to bed. 2 hours later, woke up, and my goodness, I'll never forget this feeling. And I know we never forget our birth experiences, but I just had this such a interesting pain. Like I woke up and I had a split second of just like, oh, and then next minute, bam, this like feeling that I really can't describe down underneath, but it's like someone had a fist on the inside pushing out of my vagina. And then that was it. That was my waters breaking in the bed. And I jumped up so quick, which is very unusual because when I was pregnant, it took me like ages to like roly-poly out of bed, but I was out of there. And I was standing there and I just went off to the toilet, and going to the toilet was past the lounge room, and my friend Patrice was sitting there on the lounge room, and I walked straight past her and her eyes just lit up like saucers. She must have known. And I went and sat in the toilet and I was like, okay, right, what just happened? And I looked in my undies and there it was, the mucus plug was there, and I knew that was something, that was a sign, and I don't remember reading too much about it, but I knew that meant that, you know, stuff was happening. And so I changed the pads and got back out there and I said, Patrice, like this is it. I think something's happening. And she went, Ali, what do I do? Like, I don't know. And she obviously doesn't have that voice. I just had the really stupid impersonation of a Scottish voice then. And so I went into my room and I went to get the phone to ring the hospital. And during that time, my waters just started gushing out, like dribbling. And I had a nightie thing on, and Adrienne came rushing in. She's like, Ali, what do I do? And I said, it's okay, I'm ringing the hospital. And then she ran out the room, and then she came back in with 2 big saucepans and she put them under me while I was standing there. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I don't know. What do I do?" And so I was standing there on the phone to the hospital with 2 saucepans under me, like a leaking roof, gushing water into these saucepans. So I rang the hospital and she said, "Look, why don't you just come in?" So I did. So I rang a taxi. We were in Melbourne at the time and we were probably about 15, 20-minute drive to the hospital, not too far. And my birth support partner was luckily, again, right next door. So I got someone to go and get her, and she was just about to go to bed and she was a bit sleepy, and she threw on some stuff and up she rocked, and there she was, looking as fabulous as she is. And the taxi rocked up and in we got, and we drove off, and I probably had about 3 contractions during that point. So it was really interesting watching in the rear vision mirror for the taxi driver, his face every time I started contracting. I could just seem to focus my eyes on the rear vision mirror, and there his face was, and it was just terrified. And I kept looking at my friend Rachel, and we just both went, had a little giggle together, and we thought that was pretty funny. So the taxi ride was fine. It was good. And I'm glad we did it that way because, we were very much bike people and we didn't have cars and, all that type of stuff we were into living in Melbourne. And I thought that was the best way, and it was fine. And we got to the hospital and walked in, and I had a contraction waiting to see someone. And then I got put into a triage, and that's where it went downhill in a sense. I mean, there was moments, and there was like I said, get a doula if you can. If you can get a doula and you can find one and you can, afford to have that too, it's possibly a great resource to have. Or if you have a friend or a birth partner that is completely informed on the system and birth, use them. So getting into triage was when I found out how the care system that I chose was called team midwifery. So I would see a group of 8 midwives, and hopefully I would be able to have one of them in the birth. But that didn't work out, and I saw different people each time, and I still didn't get the same person in the birth. So in the triage, I had some pretty robust and grumpy people in there that weren't too nice or kind or supportive that I felt. They wanted me up on the bed, and I didn't want to get up on the bed, and they said, "You get up on the bed, we need to monitor you." And I said I didn't want to, and my friend had to sort of plug away and try and support that. But in the end, I got up on the bed and strapped in, and I don't know what happened, but that's when the pain went from manageable to really out of control. And not even the pain. See, it wasn't even noted. Sorry, I shouldn't even say that word. It's not even noted as pain during that point, but it went to pain, and I felt pain. I went from that feeling like I was in a process and something was happening to a feeling like, I'm in pain, I need to fix this, something's wrong, alarm bells. So hence fight and flight probably kicked in. And I believe that's probably when he went posterior, because that's what I had. It went straight into my back. And if I was in a state that I informed myself again and I was aware of what that could have been and what that meant, I would have handled it so much better. I know that. And I would have known how to sit and move, because I would have known that I was allowed to do those things. But I didn't. I was just thought I had to sit on the bed with this strap on because I was told what to do. And being that girl that grew up that was always good at being told what to do, I was just doing what I was doing, being told what to do. And so I wasn't allowed to move, and I wanted to, and I was just started, screaming, and it was really loud, and obviously it made them more grumpy, and it made my friend concerned, and she was just so supportive, and she put her hand on my back, and she was there, and I remember whispering to me, and oh my goodness, thank goodness for her. That's all I have to say, because these people there, they were not nice. They were mean and nasty, and I'll never forget that experience from them. So lesson here again, inform yourself. If you can, find a doula, that advocate for you that says, come on, mama, you can do this, and keep supporting you no matter what. Again, a great birth partner or doula is just important. During that time in triage, I went to the toilet, and probably that was my excuse for wanting to get up, and I went and sat in the toilet, and I just found this sense of peace, and I got myself back together and calmed myself down, and it was really good. And during that time, my friend was kind of advocating for me there, and trying to get me into a room, because I was told to just sort of essentially go home and take some Panadol, and I didn't want to do that. And I thought, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not getting back in a cab. I'm not, I'm here. This is where I want to be. Let's do this. And I went back out, and that's this point when the doctor came in to check me. And, if I forget this, my goodness. He come in, and he's like got this glove that he put on his hand, and as he snapped it onto his wrist, he looked at me and said, well, ma'am, if you keep this up, you'll be in for a C-section, don't you think? And it's just like, when like a baby gets hurt, or maybe if you take something off a baby that he really wanted to have, and there's that pause before the cry. That's me. I had this moment of just nothingness, like pause, and then I was like, what? Like, lost it. And I lost it in a sense of like, right, I'm angry mum now, that's not cool. And I started again getting fight and flight and worrying about all this stuff that I shouldn't have been, where I should have been going inward, because that was probably at that time he was ready to come out. I was pretty sure at home he was ready to come out before I went to the hospital. And on retrospect, recognising those feelings now, knowing what I know, being in tune with your body, I guess, is such a good tool for labour and all those situations that when they do face themselves, you'll be a bit more apt at handling them, and the support around you too. So that was pretty funny. I can laugh about it now, but I was a bit like angry about that for a while during the process of healing. So eventually I got into the room. They probably were sick of my yelling and carrying on, so they'll just get her in. And it was really good. My friend got the lights dimmed for me, and I curled up on the bed because I was tired at that point. So after those 3 jolly days of being fun and jumping around and thinking that this was all great and good, and it did actually wear me out. So I possibly got not much sleep. And I actually don't think I got much sleep. I really didn't. So I was pretty tired, and I curled up in fetal position on the bed. I got a gas thing shoved into my face, and I sucked on that and laid in the dark. And my friend held my hand, and I offered her some shots every now and then of the gas and reefed it back off of her, the poor girl. So, she probably endured that for quite a fair while. So I got into the hospital, I think it was 9 o'clock. And Mally was born at 7:24. So, I guess it was a long labour because I had that sort of prodromal experience. But I guess it was pretty lengthy in there considering that shaky start. So that was okay. And I forgot to mention too that I got a shot of pethidine And this again is just making sure that you can not so much now, I've sort of learned a lot about birth plans, and I know a really interesting lady that does birth mapping, Bella Birth, that I find that so much more better than actually writing a plan. So it's mapping out a situation and looking at what could happen in these different elements, and preparing yourself for birth as it may be. And with that, if I probably took the time again to inform myself and write a bit of a scope, I guess, of what I wanted to do, and have that to present to people, I definitely would have said, do not offer me drugs at all, because I had no idea that they were even going to offer that. I just thought that, that was for extreme situations, and I just didn't think that that was on the cards again, being silly Billy me. I thought, again, I got this, and why would they offer me stuff apart from like gas or something? I just had no thought that that would ever happen. So being in the state that I was, again, bit of fight and flight response mode, and, bit of out of my nice probably shoebox that I was living in at home, where I could have curled up and birthed on a pile of socks. I was in this really crazy environment, and I didn't know what was going on. I was panicking, and so instead of going, hey, you've got this, come on, you can do it, you're nearly there, and your baby's coming, your body's doing what it's supposed to, I got offered, what drugs can I give you, in those words. And I said, drugs? What do you mean? And she said, well, we can give you some pethidine, and that will sort of take the edge off. And probably, again, they were trying to shut me up. And so I went for it. I was like, okay, that sounds good. Do it. And I got it. And so I don't know if it made much of a difference, but it just got me a bit off with the fairies, and I don't think I really liked it because I felt a bit sick. And checking my records after the birth, I noticed that I got 2 shots, and I have no idea. I don't remember that second one at all. And that's probably one thing that I'll do one day, is go and purchase my hospital records and perhaps see what really happened. So that did happen twice. And so I ended up fetal position, obviously off chops or whatever you call it, with the pethidine, and got the gas, and really not with it and out of it. But probably having said that, it did help with the fight and flight, because I had a dark room and my friend was there, and I concentrated on her and her words to me, and I went to that inward space, and I got left alone there with her for a while. And I think we must have made ourselves so in that sort of sense that we didn't want anyone near us. And I didn't get checked again after that doctor with the blue glove, doctor man. I didn't get checked again, so no one went near us. Good for them, ticking their boxes. And it was great, because I just come out of it again. It's which the hormones were still doing what they were supposed to do, obviously, because I came out of that little la land, and I went, I need to push. And my friend Rachel said, are you sure? And I went, yes. And she bolted out the room and went and got the midwives. The midwives came in, and again, they were very condescending, would be a good word for that, because they were like, oh, she's not ready. And they just glided my legs apart and had a look. And as they were doing that, his secondary waters must have broke, which I thought it was quite funny. So internally, I was having a bit of a joke with myself, and I think that's what kept me going through it and not taking this whole thing too seriously, because that's probably my personality in a bit, that I had to make some points where I had to laugh about things. And so internally, I was having this little ha-ha moment, like, haha, yeah, I do need to push actually. And the waters broke, and she was like, wow, you're ready. And so believe it or not, at that point, she said, wow, you're ready. And the turning around must have happened at some point in then, because I remember the pain just exiting the back, and this was the best part. I loved this part. I turned into one of my sort of affirmations that came from my friend Rachel that was warrior woman, and I just kept picturing that, and I just created this, probably because I was on pethidine and the gas was still kicking in. I created this like visual of this like glowing astral warrior woman that just like slammed this sword into the ground and like made this sort of earth break. And I guess that was me. And I was like, I'm ready. And I sat up finally out of the fetal position, and I got up, and then I was ready to push, and I started pushing. And my goodness, after Julie's birth of not pushing and not even like daring to push because she just flew out, he was probably about a good hour of pushing. And that was a lot of hard work because I was tired, and I realized that, I needed to gain every ounce of strength that I did. And so the pushing experience, went for about an hour. And again, my friend cracked a joke at one of the midwives. So they weren't too happy with us for some reason. I don't think they were very nice. And I got some really young ones. And I mean, again, it would have been nice to have a familiar face, but I had no familiar face. So I focused all my attention onto my friend, and she cracked a joke about it sort of, it's easy to go in and hard to come out type of thing. And again, my internal little laughter kicked in. And during that time, the crowning happening, and I remember that the burning sensation, that was real. That was there. And he seemed to, it was like I could feel that sort of surge of the in and the out, and in and the out when, the sort of uterus contracts in and out. And finally we got his head out, and before his head came out, I did poo myself. I suppose that's the word for it. I couldn't think of any sort of scientific terminology for that one, but yes, a lot of poo come out. And I remember that feeling, and I remember the midwife going, it's okay. And I just really didn't mind. I was like, whatever. It came out, and I think it did cross my mind about the chilies at some point. So, when chilies come out, they're a bit burning. So I had lots of burning going on there in two different realms. Head came out, and I remember them saying about the hair, and I just, that feeling of once the head popped out was just surreal, because I remember that little moment in between of just waiting for that next contraction, and that finite play of you as one person, and you and your whole life just rushes through everything, and that next push is your whole life right until this moment, and here comes your firstborn child. And boy, did that happen. I pushed, and out he came, and it was just, that was it. It was like my next chapter. The page unfolded, and here he was, and it was just, again, no words. And for you mums out there that have had this experience, no matter what way your baby has come out, because, a birth is a birth, however your baby came out, unless it came out your bum. But a birth is a birth, and, you get that ability to see that child for the first time, and you transform. And that's what happened. I transformed, and warrior woman, thank goodness she was there to sort of guide me, because here he was. And thankfully they lifted up my shirt, and I think I took it off in the end, and he went straight onto my skin, straight onto my breast, and he was fine. And I was just big sigh of relief. And he had lots of hair, so much dark hair, and he was just beautiful. He was just scrunchy and beautiful, and he was ready to come out. And I just felt so proud of him because, of what I guess how he came into this world he came into the world with love, and he was conceived with love. And even though I was going it alone as a single parent, there was a lot of love there for him in his support networks, from his family, from my friends. He was coming into this world of pure love, and what more could have mattered at that point? Nothing, no one, just me and him, and there it was. So there, he was born at 7:24, and at that point, like, the sun sort of came over probably one of the dull city buildings in Melbourne, and it shone into the room. And after probably a few hours, I think, or probably an hour that we're in that room, a reflection sort of came in the room and must have hit a bit of a glass, and it made a rainbow effect on one of the back walls. And my friend grabbed Mally and she held him up into the rainbow, and we had this beautiful moment together. And there he was. So, and that was the birthing, and I went and showered and I felt great. I just felt really good. And I felt, I suppose, in a sense, on that birth high, and that those hormones were kicking in. And then I got wheeled up to the maternity ward, and I finally tucked him into my chest, and I laid back and I had that moment with him. And then again, your support network and the people that you're going to listen to, and just again, I was so naive again, I suppose, and just thought my body would let me know how to breastfeed, and I'd got this. And I didn't really do any sort of pre-planning or informing myself about the process. I just thought you get your boob out and that's it. The baby drinks the milk, no problem. So, during that moment too, I suppose, again, I was this type of person that was quite creative and educated and making informed decisions about my life and seeing what needs to be done and doing it. But being involved in this system that had to follow regulations and tick certain boxes, that it just didn't gel with me. And I realised that there, because I had him tucked into me. I was so tired and I was ready to sleep. And I shut my eyes in that ward, and I was alone at that point. So my parents were coming up probably 4 hours away to come and see me and bring us home. And so I was alone, and I was like, great, sleep will happen now. Shut my eyes. Someone came in and she just yelled at me again. And she said, "What are you doing? You could fall off that bed and kill your baby." And I opened my tired eyes, and again I felt that same feeling of just being violated and attacked, and I just didn't understand. I said, what do you mean? And she said, "You've got him tucked into your body. He should be in that cot over there against the wall." And I said, "But he's fine, he's asleep, I need to sleep." No, put him in the cot. So I was like, being the good girl, I listened and I put him in the cot. And he started to cry, and she left, and that was it. And he cried, and I didn't know what to do because he was crying. So I put him on the boob, and he'd just fuss on it because he just wanted to go to sleep and I wanted to go to sleep. So all the nice little birth hormones started to really plummet, and again it set in, like big time reality of someone that didn't feel supported set in. And this is where it became hard, and he cried, and this went on for hours and hours, and it was probably so well into late afternoon that I had another midwife came and was telling me how to latch on, and she's like, "Look, you just feed when you can." And she was actually really nice, surprise, surprise, and that was probably it, and she left. And then another midwife came in and said, "Nope, every 4 hours you will feed. That's how you do it." And I said, "Oh, understand. I was getting all this conflicting advice of what to do. And to me, innately, I just thought, that's it. You breastfeed when your baby wants, but obviously not. So again, mother's intuition shut off. Not having anyone around there that could have vouched for me or have had experience, I guess, of listening to intuition, that was difficult. So I went with whatever they said. I just let go. And in the end, it came into evening and I started hallucinating. My goodness, I fully was tired and I fully hallucinated. And he was crying and I just felt horrible and I felt insufficient and I wasn't doing the right job. And I felt so sad because, again, on retrospect, if I knew what I knew now and if I had so much more strength to say no, like, this is how it is. I want my baby close to me. We're going to sleep. Thank you very much. That whole episode would have turned out different because it did affect my bonding and it did affect things later on down the track, which it took me a long time to heal. And even up into Julia's birth, nearly 6 years later, I had to go through it all again and heal a lot of aspects of that. So, so she ended up wheeling him away and I don't know where she took him, to some nursery, I suppose, and I had to sleep and I just shut down and I slept for probably 6 hours or something. I can't even remember. And I woke up and instantly I was like, where's my baby? And I just scrambled out of that bed into the hall and I was frantic like person, this, pajamas, running around looking for a baby. And she found him for me. Lady wheeled him out and he was just sitting there all like wrapped up like a cocoon, and I grabbed him and that was that. And we tried the feeding again and eventually I got out of there. So as soon as my mum and dad came, I was out of there and I couldn't wait to get home. And I never forget this feeling. And that feeling has again driven me to do what I want to do, to empower women and to help us connect and tell our stories without, I guess, that fear on both ways, whether it be a good story or a story that just didn't work out quite as you expected. We need to acknowledge that, because that feeling that I had leaving the hospital was just horrible. I felt completely violated as a person, on myself as a woman and as a human being, and the same feeling went into my child, that I just felt for him so much. And when I got home, things got better because I surrounded myself again with my beautiful, positive, empowering friends, and we continued our journey. And postpartum, it was difficult. I had a lot of issues with breastfeeding. My milk flow is just like, could shoot out a meter probably if it could. So he used to choke, and it took me a while to figure that out. Again, I found a really great support network, the Australian Breastfeeding Association, and I made so many phone calls to those guys. But yeah, that was it. They helped me a lot. And again, I went out as being a single mama. I threw myself into parent groups, communities as much as I could, and I ended up living with my parents for 6 months, which I am wholly grateful for, that they sort of helped me out through that first 6 months. And from then on, I became a bit of a powerhouse single mum. So right now, at my point as a doula, I'm very much going to focus on single parent birthings, and offer as much support as I can as a doula for single mums, because I know that feeling of not sort of knowing where to go. And now, having done it with a beautiful partner that I have for Julia's birth, I know how much you need to empower the mums, I guess. So it was an interesting journey. And again, it was a birth that I had to do a lot of healing from. And I think I spent many time going, well, other people have had worse experience. And I did get told that classic line, well, there's nothing wrong with your baby, So, he was born healthy, so you've got nothing to worry about. So that's what I had to deal with. And I thought, well, okay, I guess so. So for my healing, I used to think, well, people have had a worse experience, which I've been told, so I couldn't validate what happened or acknowledge it. So I got sort of trapped into that, I guess, and I just minimized my feelings, and I didn't deal with them for a long time, and I didn't talk about them. And eventually I did, and eventually I got over that anger too. I was very angry at that hospital and those staff, and I had to get over that anger too and realise that the anger wasn't going to help in any way. And obviously I've made it very productive doing what I'm doing now. So, yeah, it's real no matter which way or that you look at it. And I think one of the things that drives me the most is it usually takes the second time around for, women, partners to realise what happened and to make it better. And we can always make it better. And that was one of the things that I had to come to realise too. So there's Mally's birth. I love him. He's such a gorgeous, sensitive little child now, and he had so much love as a single mama around him, and I went and created this beautiful world for him. And I hope that by listening to this that you guys could get a sense into the story, I suppose, as such, and to the journey. And if you listen to episode 1, you'll hear Julia's birth, which was just absolutely empowering and insightful. And now that I can look at this birth, and as I tell it, it's just interesting that, I'll talk about the feelings behind it, and I guess observe it now without, feeling any trauma or pain or anything like that. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. I forgot, I'll just throw out a few little resources there. Obviously, I didn't do too much in reading of the books or entering into the birth world. But pregnancy, I walked and rode my bike absolutely everywhere. And I really feel that had a big help. I did a lot of resting, a lot of walking, and I was known to be on my bike at 9 months pregnant with shopping bags hanging off them. So I didn't stop at that point. So keep moving, keep active, keep curious about life, keep interested in, and just be that strong warrior woman. Did you connect with this episode? Then head over to our website, circleofbirth.com. There you'll find show notes, pictures, resources, and potentially connect with today's storyteller. Don't forget to sign up to be updated with new empowering episodes and content. Help the show grow by contributing a tip in the jar to make sure we can continue to better the podcast and connect more and more to the wisdom of birth and each other. Hey, and don't forget the iTunes rating. This has been another episode of the Birth Share Project. We breathe, we birth, we empower.